All right. Well, Shane Johnson,
The
Mr.
man.
Segway himself, is sending us right into spring football superlatives here, getting a head start on it. On the rest of the country, you see some of our other colleagues on the other sites on three. They're talking about, oh, just a couple more weeks to spring football. Let's get signed up, and you should still sign up for us, by the way. Michigan starts today. February 20th is the start date. They will play their spring game on April 1st, and kind of get it in and out a little faster than a lot of their peers. So what we're going to do tonight, and we'll see what time permits for Q&A wise. I do definitely want to take a couple at the end of the show, but we're just going to kind of burn through these really quick here. So I'll start with, I will introduce the category. We'll just go Clayton, Chris,
Are we
me.
drafting? Is this
What's
a
that?
draft? Is this a draft?
It's not a draft.
No.
You can repeat. We'll revisit the draft later on. Hopefully, I do better in that than I did last year.
That was embarrassing,
In terms
Anthony.
of the eyes of the public, but
Yeah.
um, so Clayton, since you were Mr. Popular because of the spring game draft last year, I'll start with you. The player with the most to gain in spring football over the next 6 weeks.
I want to make it. I wasn't trying to refer back to that. I was just wondering if we could overlap or whatever. But thanks for reminding the people that I did dominate that spring game draft. I can't wait for the next one.
You did. You
Anyway,
did well.
thank you. Player with the most to gain. I guess if we can do overlap, I want to just say two. One is Kenneth Grant. I think he can really solidify himself as a monster on the middle of the defensive line. And then I'll say on the offensive side, Darius Clemens with some outside receiver snaps up for grabs. I think he's got a lot to gain. He could be a starter by the time, fall camp comes around, or somebody else could. So, he's got that opportunity. And I think he has the skill set. Both those guys, most importantly, has the skill set to seize one of those opportunities, which is obviously that is a huge factor there.
Yeah, I think Amorian Walker at corner since he's starting out there, and Ronnie Bell called him an alien, and he said he's the guy that I want to see at receiver. Well, maybe we'll see him play a little bit both ways, but I think Steve Klingscale, in talking to people, thinks that he can be a really good cornerback. And if you can have a guy over there on that side with that athleticism, on the other side of Will Johnson, man, you're going to be shutting down a lot of passing games, especially with the safeties that you have coming back. So love Rod Moore back there. I've said it many times. That kid is fantastic. So yeah, to me, that's the guy I think really has the most to gain. I've heard good things about Miles Pollard too. Behind him, I think they feel more comfortable than the fans do with what they have at that position. So that's the one that we're going to keep our eyes on, and I'll also be watching to see how the tight ends shake out behind Colston Loveland. Remember how that used to be, that position group seemed like it was crowded. Well, now it's okay. Who's that second guy? Is it going to be Max Bredesen? Who's it going to be in there? Who am I missing, guys? Colston
AJ
Loveland.
AJ Barner
Yep.
from
Oh yeah, of
Indiana.
course. Yeah, of course. So, but yeah, they needed depth there and they got it. So, very excited to see that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I was gonna go with Amorian Walker for all the reasons that Chris listed there. I mean, again, to be a cornerback at 6'4", it's just so, to have that plus the athletic traits that they're saying that he does have, it's just so rare. So
Yeah.
if they can find a way to pull that out of him and make him a Big Ten caliber cornerback, he doesn't need to match Will Johnson in terms of talent, but yeah, as a solidifying playmaking presence on the other side of him, that would be huge. So I think most to gain for me is Amorian Walker. On the flip side, let's go with the player with the most to prove, or if you want to really split hairs here, would be the most to lose. And I think my definition of that would be maybe an upperclassman guy that we've been waiting to turn it on, or someone who, there might be a younger guy behind him that might come on and take some playing time away. So in your guys' eyes, who are those guys on this roster?
Yeah. Put Shane's question back up there again, if you would, Hutch. I want to see exactly what he said. Yeah. Because I want to answer the rest of his questions too, since he paid his $9.99. But you know what? I think it's Carson Barnhart, right, and Trante Jones with the guys that they brought in, and it's like these guys have been waiting their turn, and they played a lot of football here, and played some good football here, and now you've got these other guys, Ladarius Henderson and Miles Hinton, and you're thinking it's kind of crowded, right? You didn't expect them to bring all these guys in, so. To me, I wouldn't say the most to lose, but these are the guys that are really going to have to step up. And to solidify their playing time. And then what happens with Gio El Hadi, right? Giovanni El Hadi, who played incredible football at times last year. You know what? It's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. And that was something else that I wrote about in the 3-2-1 column today was, okay, how is that going to pan out? That's one of the biggest question marks for me. But it's a good thing because you got a ton of talent there. Remember in Brady Hoke's first year when they had 5 guys and if one of them got hurt, you were screwed. So David Molk had to play the bowl game on 1 foot, essentially. So that's what that to me is the answer to that question.
I'm going to go with Tommy Doman. I think he has the most to prove. What is he going to be able to do? Is he going to be able to handle kickoffs, place kicking, and punting? He'd be the first guy for Michigan to do that since Kenny Allen in 2016. And we're not going to know about Adam Samaha until he comes in the summer and has fall camp. So this is a big opportunity for Tommy Doman. And then I'd go Braden McGregor as well. I think, he's a guy that it's not now or never. He showed some flashes, but man, there's some talent there as well, and it's not going to be easy for him to grab a starting job or a big-time role. So, this is a big opportunity for him as well.
Yeah. And I also, going back to Shane's question there about were we surprised that they picked up 3 offensive linemen? I didn't think they needed 3. Now, at least one of them has 2 years of eligibility, right? And Miles Hinton, I believe. So
yeah, I think Nugent might have a couple too.
Yeah, which is great. So Drake Nugent being the 7th. So, but that was a little bit surprising because when we were talking about transfers in, we were all thinking about different positions and not, we thought maybe 1 offensive lineman. All of a sudden you got 3. So, yeah. So let the cream rise there, Shane, is how I view it. And you know what? To borrow from Juwan Howard, for competitors only, right? And you can't be scared about bringing in more talent that you're going to be driving people away. You've got to do what's best for your basketball team. I laugh when people say, well, why would they bring in Jalen Llewellyn, knowing it might drive Frankie Collins out? Well, Frankie could have been here and been the starting point guard, right? If he wanted to be. Jalen Llewellyn, stay and compete, man up and compete. Jalen Llewellyn, you've seen him. Don't you think you're better than Jalen Llewellyn? And needed a guard depth. So you go out and you get your guard depth. And if it causes somebody else to leave, then you make do with what you've got. It's just exactly what Juwan Howard has done. These guys, Michigan in the transfer portal on football, I think you're going to see that more and more with this NIL stuff until they get that figured out. Taking some guys, they're not going to be revamping the roster, but they're going to be getting guys like the Barnhart, like Ladarius, and everybody else to fill those needs and to make everybody else better to compete.
Yeah, for me, talking about competing and old guys, that's rude. Older players, experienced players that we're looking at as maybe you have to look over your shoulder a little bit. To me, it's I'm going to lump 2 guys in here. It's Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson. Now, I think that Cornelius Johnson, I want to be clear, I think him coming back kind of stabilizes that group. I think that he can be a more consistent player for them. But we know that, and you can throw Morian Walker in this group as well at wide receiver. Those sophomores are coming on, and those guys, for different reasons, Darius Clemens, Tyler Morris, potentially a Morian Walker, those guys all have traits that the staff is excited about. And with a full off season, you've been in the program for a year, full strength conditioning. The quarterback is going to be that, assuming there's no injury, it's going to be a stable situation throughout the spring, throughout fall camp. So we'll see who emerges. I would never just assume that guys like Cornelius Johnson or Roman Wilson immediately move into more productive roles, just because it has been a little inconsistent at times for them. And the way that Michigan runs the football, I don't know that it always lends itself to these wide receivers taking as much of a leap as maybe fans would like to see. So we'll see what happens there. I want to move on now to, let's see, most impactful new player, whether that be a freshman or a transfer. Chris, you can go first on that.
That's a great one. You know what? I want to say Darius Clemens because I want it to be Darius Clemens. I want them to have that explosive receiver. And the reviews that we got from him when he first arrived here, they were saying his speed and the way that he was coming back for the ball and everything else were just, otherworldly. Now, he didn't play as much as we expected him to. It's not the first guy where we've heard glowing reviews. Remember Kevin Grady and his 99-yard touchdown on the first day of spring ball, right? Who didn't live up to the hype, but we were so excited about this kid because of what he brought to the table, and Jim Harbaugh calling him part of the freak show and everything else. So I'm guessing I'd like it to be him. If I had to say who I really think that the most impactful new player is, I think Greg Nugent's going to win that center job. I think Raheem Anderson is right there behind him. I know Greg Crippen's in the mix as well, and at one point he seemed to be the heir apparent. I loved what I saw from Raheem in that Rutgers game and the edge that he played with. I think Oluwatimi brought out the best in him and really helped train him. So I think he will give him a battle, but I think Nugent at that spot with that veteran leadership and the fact that he's been in so many games, him and those two guards next to him have the potential to be one of the best interior lines in the country if Nugent is as good as we think he is. So that's who I'm going with.
That's a great pick. He would be second on my list. I'm going to go Ladarius Henderson, who I think is going to win the left tackle job. And given that, center is obviously maybe just as important or more. But I think Ladarius Henderson is going to do a really good job. When I was talking to him after he committed, I was asking about how it's going to be to pick up the playbook, and I told him about the stories. Oluwatimi came into spring ball last year, and they were blown away by how much he knew already because he was studying up while Michigan was in the college football playoff and everything. And he said that it should be, not in a cocky way, but it should be pretty easy for him. He came in as a young freshman, was a 17-year-old, and started on Arizona State's team. He learned the playbook then. He had 3 or 4 different offensive coordinators throughout his time there. So he had to learn different offenses, and he lived with quarterbacks every year he was there, he said. So I think that's going to be big. A guy that was a team captain there is going to be able to come in with a bunch of leadership and kind of galvanize that left tackle spot. So I'll take him as my most impactful transfer. But speaking of that too, there are a few guys on this team that transferred in and were team captains elsewhere. So that helps with, I think, some of the potential culture, like concerns with bringing in transfers. They only brought in 7. There are teams around the country with 20 or 25. So it's not like a crazy number, but it is high for Michigan. But I'm not worried at all about culture. I think they got really good fits here.
Yeah, you're not plugging in with other people's crap, and not calling other players crap, but I'm just saying, they're cast-offs,
Right.
You're plugging in with guys that fit your culture, that you've recruited, that Juwan Howard, when he went and got Mike Smith, and guys like that, John D. Brown, he said, first and foremost, we know they fit our culture and what we want to do here. Jalen Llewellyn was the same thing. The first time we interviewed that kid, we knew this kid is Michigan material in terms of his personality. So that's huge to me. They've got the great culture right now. I remember asking Ronnie Bell, is this thing set up for the future? And he said, absolutely, because of that culture and the young guys buying in. Like I mentioned, Raheem Anderson, who completely changed his body. These guys are now, you're back to how it used to be in the 90s and the early 2000s, where you don't want to let down the guys that you played behind and who took you under their wing and taught you how to play. You want to win for them as well. So it's not guys flocking to the pros. It's not guys looking to get out of here as soon as they can. You've got a culture now, and you're recruiting guys, whether it's freshmen or in the transfer portal, Anthony, to fit it.
Yeah, for me, we have another super chat here from Shane Johnson.
I know Shane.
$4.99. He says, "CV, my soft comment was a compliment. Everyone knows the good man you are. No explanation needed for anyone that can't decipher the English language."
Yeah, but Shane, Shane, I appreciate it. I want to get back to Shane's last question too when we get a chance, because he had 3. He paid $9.99 for 3 questions, but I know it was Shane, and I appreciate that, man. And you are a preferred customer. Bummed that we could not hook up in Arizona.
Shane's super chat will definitely come up because we do have one more category after this.
Sweet.
Most impactful new player for me, I think, is going to be Josiah Stewart. Michigan, it's edge rusher U. And this is a guy that, even before transferring, is someone that the NFL has had its eye on. Obviously, he's has only played 2 years in college, but he's flashed the athleticism. His pass rush grades, I think, as a freshman was a 90 overall. I think last year it slipped a bit, but the pressures were still there. So Josiah Stewart getting Big Ten caliber coaching from a guy like Mike Elston and mixing into Michigan's defense, where he's going to be a fixture of that pass rush. To me, I think that he's we'll see what happens. We know that they like to rotate those edge guys like hockey lines. So I'm not going to sit here and make any sweeping conclusions that he's a plug and play starter or anything like that. But I do think if you're if you're telling me I have a choice between Josiah Stewart or Yabioki, I'm going to go with the guy who actually has the production in college, as opposed to the traits and the hopping around and things like that. So I will bring Shane's original super chat back up because he asked for biggest spring intrigue from each of you. And I think this is a good place for us to call it tonight in terms of the last category here that I have left. Got rid of a few because they're a little bit redundant with things that we've talked about. Most intriguing spring storyline. Chris, I will throw it over to you.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because some of the guys, like you want to know how they're going to split the carries and stuff like that. But Blake Corum's not going to be playing. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of Donovan Edwards either. I wonder, are they going to be able to get those guys on the field at the same time? Is Donovan Edwards going to be used in the slot more, which I brought up in my column as well today, because you want those guys on the field, right? Mike Hart was the one that told us last year, Michigan's running backs coach, that this kid could be a starting slot at any school in the country. So are you going to do that, and how is it going to work? Are you going to have enough playing time for all those guys in the slot? But you know what, if he's one of your best players, you put him out there. So, but to me, I got a tip, Shane, that they think this defensive line is going to be potentially even better than last year, based on what they've seen in the early going of the guys that they've got coming back. We know Mason Graham's an absolute stud in there. You're losing Mozzie Smith. But remember when everybody said they were going to take a huge step back when Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo left, and here we are. Last year, they were outstanding. So I like Chris Jenkins in there. I think he's up to 300 pounds now. We saw him eating those power bars at the Gerald Ford Museum when I made Clay ask him what his weight was, which he did. You're a good soldier, Clayton.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad he didn't ask me back.
Yeah.
To be honest.
You're gonna be dunking by the end of the year, so you got some work to do. But hey, that's right. But he said, he's up to 300 now. I think I read somewhere, and or close to it. Yeah. So,
300.
and you know what? He was providing some interior pass rush at the end of the year, guys. Ohio State got drew a huge holding penalty. Rayshon Benny, I think, is primed to make a huge move. He had a huge play, underrated play in that Ohio State game when he got the pressure with CJ Stokes running out of the pocket and was just about to sack him when he threw that crappy underhanded interception to Taylor Upshaw. So I expect more from him too. I think this defensive line is going to be better. Shane, I think that's the biggest spring intrigue for me. I want to see if Josiah Stewart is as good as everybody says he is and where that pass rush comes from, but they feel pretty good about it. And if those guys feel pretty good about it, some of these guys like Steve Klinkscale, then I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, you took one of them from me, is that pass rush. Chris Jenkins said that they're obsessing over how they can become a better pass rush unit. And I think there's two things that maybe are holding Michigan back from, being a college football playoff team and a potential national champion. And one of those would be that next gear to the offense, with the passing attack and being an elite passing team when you have to, in the pass rush as well. It hasn't been good enough in maybe, it's been really good against Ohio State at times, especially in the 2021 game. But some of the games against those elite teams, I think you could ask for a little bit more. Georgia, maybe that game was what it was going to be, but Michigan didn't really get after them much. I thought Georgia had a great game plan. And then TCU, I thought Michigan could have gotten a little bit more pressure without having to bring the house on some of those plays. So it's the pass rush up front, and it's great to hear things like that about the defensive line and what Chris Jenkins said, basically, that they recognize that. And then going back to my comment about the offense is Kirk Campbell, and I think we mentioned this last week as well, but he was talking with John Jansen about how they do want to find out what the identity of the pass game is going to be. So maybe some changes there. And that factors in with Sharon Moore, who's now fully in control of this offense. So I want to see what that's going to look like. It's his show now. It's going to be collaborative, but he is going to have obviously more input and be the guy, that main voice. So what changes will come with that? I think we will maybe not learn much of in the spring, because even when they come out for the spring game, it's going to be very vanilla. But, we may get some indications, and I'm sure we'll get to ask around and poke around about things like that. So it'll be definitely something I'm asking about when we get to talk to some of these players.
Yeah, for me, I think I've talked about this a few times, and if it seems like I'm fixating on it, I apologize, but I want to know how much more, and we won't get the answer to this in the spring game, I assume, but I would love to know how much more they plan on putting up their quarterback's plate this year, because again, we saw the silver lining. I've said it a million times at this point. The silver lining of the Fiesta Bowl was that you kind of got to see what what he was capable of when you can put a game on his shoulders. Now, at the same time, made 2 very costly mistakes in that game. But, I just want to know every year during the offseason, you get a little bit different flavor. You add a different look. You install a different package, things like that. It doesn't always stay the same. So for me, I mean, it's Sherrone Moore's offense completely now. I mean, other guys like Mike Hart, like Kirk Campbell, like Jim Harbaugh, they'll all have an influence in how it looks. But I'm interested in knowing how the offense changes with one play caller now, a sole play caller. I'm interested in, how you can expand, how you build upon. Like last year was 2021 set a really good foundation. And then last year felt like you sort of started to see him peel the layers back a bit. I mean, even just in making the quarterback change that they did, a guy with just a little bit more of a dual threat skill set. So for me, it's how much more dangerous can you make this offense? And can it truly be a pick your poison type of offense? I know at times they said that's what they were trying to be, and that's what they thought they were. But I want to, again, never gonna complain about controlling the line of scrimmage and running the football. But I would just love to see love to know what the other wrinkles might be with this team moving forward. Thank you so much for watching. For more videos from the Wolverine, whether it be football, basketball, recruiting, live shows, and more, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for the latest.